Where does Wisconsin fit in what is now a loaded Big Ten with four new teams? Ryan Harings, Locked On Wisconsin Badgers, joining me here to answer that question. Let's just start right there, Ryan. Where does Wisconsin fit amidst this new look 18-team Big Ten?
Right. No, I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult to know for sure, right? I think Wisconsin Badger fans know where we should fit, right? Given the last 20, 25 years of what the program has been. But let's be frank, last year was a 7-win season. A couple seasons before that weren't the greatest under Paul Chryst. There's a reason they made a move to Luke Fickell. So where should they fit? I think they slot right under the blue blood tier still, which is everyone has different definitions of this. In the Big Ten, I think that's Ohio State, Penn State. I think it's Michigan. I think it's Oregon. And maybe USC, but I tend to think USC is going to have more issues with physicality in the Big Ten than people think. So I think Wisconsin's right in that next tier is where they fit into the Big Ten. But they have a little bit of work to maintain that, and then they have a lot more work to get into that next tier.
I think on the USC physicality in the Big Ten, I don't know who doesn't think that. I'm trying to tell people that USC will be better than everybody thinks because I think they will be, and their defensive coordinator hire has been so good. But that kind of is the word on USC. Certainly not on Wisconsin, though. And I think Wisconsin and Penn State have a lot of things in common. Penn State's been at a little bit higher level consistently over the last decade or so, but we've seen Wisconsin make their fair share of Rose Bowl games. Both of those teams, both of those programs, whether it's Paul Chryst or Luke Fickell, feel very high floor, but the ceiling just isn't quite there to be a conference champion. Can Luke Fickell guide Wisconsin into that upper echelon as they incorporate all these new teams coming in as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is yes. Quite frankly and bluntly, it's yes. Now, will it happen? I don't know, but the reason you go from a Paul Chryst, and I think you described it perfectly, a very high floor coach. Paul Chryst has a really good winning percentage still, right? But it was a high floor, lower ceiling type of program, especially the way it was trending. The reason you go get a Fickell is to raise that ceiling. That's why he was brought in here. And we've already seen it from a recruiting standpoint. Last year, Fickell brought in, per recruit, the best recruiting class we've seen in 20 years at Wisconsin. This weekend, he just landed a 4-star offensive lineman with offers from Bama, a 4-star cornerback out of Florida. For the people who really followed the Badgers, followed the program, the athletes he's gotten in 2.5 years as a head coach, bringing in his recruiting department, these are guys we haven't gotten at all. And the reason it's been more of a high floor program is because we've been limited athletically on the edges, right? Cornerbacks a little shorter, a little slower, great technicians. They've been well coached, but Fickell was brought in to raise the athletic ceiling of the program. Because you know this. I mean, you've been Oregon and following the Pac-12 forever. You follow college football. You just, at some point, you just need athletes, right? All the X's and O's, it doesn't matter. Kirby Smart talks about this all the time. You just need athletes on the edges. So that's what Luke Fickell has done. He's upgraded the edges athletically, which has really been the biggest barrier for Wisconsin breaking through that tier. It's been athletes on the edges. So I think he can get them to that tier. Now, it's going to take a ton of work, and it's not going to be easy. But, yeah, I think he does raise the ceiling potentially into that realm.
You talked about the talent acquisition under Coach Fickell. Let's talk transfers because that's a great way to acquire talent nowadays in college football. You see a lot of coaches using it in a really, really big way. How would you assess Luke Fickell's, a second full season is what he's going into over there in Madison? This transfer portal class, who are the names that stand out that could make a big impact?
Yeah, if I had to use a word, I'd say tactical, right? He really, I think this staff did a better job this offseason than last year potentially of what do we really need? Let's find specific fits. So they went out and got Oklahoma running back Tyree Walker. There was a depth issue at the running back spot. Tyree Walker had 7 touchdowns last year in the Big 12. Really good, solid player. He's going to slot in immediately, probably as the number 2 behind Ches Malusi. So that's an instant impact guy, right? If you get running back number 2 in the portal, you can plug him in right away. I say this all the time on my show. Not every portal guy should be a home run, right? There's doubles and there's singles, and that's how you win. A lot of times you improve in the depth, you improve at the 2 spot. So Tyree Walker's a big guy there. And then on the edges at outside linebacker, they brought in 2 guys. Last year's team had a lot of issues with mobile quarterbacks, getting outflanked on the edges against power run teams. They went and got John Pius and Leon Lowry, both athletic outside linebackers, so they've upgraded there. They went and got Jaheim Thomas, Arkansas's leading tackler at linebacker last year in the SEC. They brought him in. So they really revamped the athleticism on the linebacker core and then added to the running back depth, among a few other pieces. But primarily, that's where they attacked this portal outside of the quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke.
Yeah, and Van Dyke comes over from Miami where he had, why don't we be nice and call it checkered results with Mario Cristobal and company. And, there are plenty of college football fans who have their own feelings on Mario Cristobal's ability to actually develop and maximize a quarterback's potential. And it's one of the things I'm curious to see with how Cam Ward fits down there in Coral Gables. But is Van Dyke the sort of guy that Wisconsin needs to play at a good enough level? Because to compete for a conference championship, I mean, this is not a deep Big Ten conference when it comes to quarterbacks. It's I think it's exceedingly thin. I think you can make the case of the 4 power conferences, it is the weakest. The Big 12 is the best. The ACC's pretty darn good. The SEC's got a bunch of guys. I think the Big Ten is probably 4th. How does Tyler Van Dyke fit into that mix?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. I agree with you. We were talking quarterback rankings on a previous show, or just kind of talking about it offline. There's not a lot of definites in this conference, right? There's a lot of young guys with potential, but that doesn't listen. We both know how young quarterbacks with potential sometimes can go in multitudes of ways. There's not a lot of guys, for sure. And listen, Van Dyke's in that category. Early in his career, he looked like a first-round pick with Miami. Really, really good. He has a rocket arm. Good size, and then it just got inconsistent, right? He has issues avoiding turnovers, lost his starting job for a period last year. So I think I think the Big Ten has a very big middle area of the quarterback tier where it's just like, honestly, I don't really know. I don't know because he's either been inconsistent as a starter, or I don't know because he's been young and it's just potential. I think Van Dyke's right in that list. Now, I don't think Van Dyke is a program lifter, right? I think he's a good quarterback. I think he will probably be a good quarterback this year for the Badgers, but if the Badgers really want to win a conference championship and get into those battles, I think it's going to have to be one of the guys they recruit out of the high school ranks and then develop. I think Van Dyke is probably more of a, keep the ship from hitting the sides type
a bridge quarterback, as they call it in the NFL. He's a bridge guy.
I think he's that. Which, listen, there's a lot of programs, right, where they have less than, like, you can win with bridge quarterbacks, I guess is what I'm saying, but the pieces around need to be there and performing at a pretty high clip for that to happen.
For Wisconsin, I feel like just at the outset, a win total of 6.5, according to our friends at FanDuel, is a little bit low. And then you look at the schedule, Ryan, and you go, maybe that's about right. I still feel like it's a touch low. I feel like 7.5 might be more appropriate. Like I lean towards the over here, but this is not a schedule that you look at and go, oh boy, I see 10 wins. I think 9 wins would be a phenomenal season for Luke Fickell and company. What does success look like to you in 2024?
I think you nailed it. 9 wins. So I did a show, ceiling floor on the program this year. I put the ceiling at 9 wins. I think, listen, in sports, anything can happen. Maybe a TCU run happens, but if they win 9 wins in year 2 of Fickell against this schedule, that's phenomenal. Like that's progress. That's a step up. That's something you sell to recruits. That's something you use to excite alumni. That builds NIL coffers. That's a tremendous season if you get to 9 wins. My early predictions 8-4. I do think the 6.5 is low, right? I think there's a little too much pendulum shift from last year because the expectations for Fickell and his staff were sky high. And then sometimes what happens when expectations aren't met, the after result is, well, we're going to shift it the other way. And now we think this is a 6.5 win team. I think they're going to get to 7 or 8, right? Because you see big jumps in programs from year 1 to year 2 of a coaching staff. The stability's there. The schemes are in place. We know Longo's offenses can score. We know Fickell can develop guys. So I think it's probably 8 wins. 9 wins would be tremendous. I have a hard time finding 10, 11 wins with this schedule because I don't think this program's quite there yet under Luke Fickell.
Yeah, and it's kind of chunked. You start Western Michigan, South Dakota. Those are a couple wins. But then it's Alabama at home, which is a fascinating game in and of itself. We can do a whole show on that particular game, and maybe we will one day. Then it's a bye and at USC. But then you get some more winnable games: Rutgers, Northwestern, and or Purdue, Rutgers, and Northwestern. But then you play 3 tough games in a row, and it's Penn State, it's at Iowa, it's hosting Oregon, it's at Nebraska before you close with a home game against Minnesota. That's as Big Ten schedules go. Yeah, you miss Michigan. whoop-de-freaking do, because now you got Oregon in the mix. You get the Ducks instead of the Huskies in there. I think it is challenging. I do still feel like 6.5 is just a touch low for Wisconsin, but we'll leave it there for today. On an optimistic note, Ryan Harings, Locked On Badgers. Check him out on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Ryan, thanks for stopping by.
I appreciate it, man.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA with the finals right around the corner and the NHL playoffs heating up as well. And FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. You can bet everything you want for college football too. The season is just under 2.5 months away. Do you understand that? You can bet games, win totals, conference title odds, national championship odds. I'd lean towards Georgia there. Whatever you want, FanDuel has got it. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and our official sportsbook sponsor here at the Locked On Network.